Hello, my name is Dr. Alyssa Roberts. I'm a pediatric endocrinologist, and I've been in practice since 2017 at Seattle Children's Hospital. I have both a clinical and a research interest in adolescents and young adults with diabetes and psychosocial factors that may impact or be impacted by their diabetes. As a part of this interest, in 2020, I published a paper looking at safe driving practices in adolescents with diabetes. I'm so excited to share information on driving with T1D along with T1D community member Natalie. Driving is an amazing tool we have that allows independence and opportunities. And the goal of this discussion today is to empower those with type 1 diabetes who are drivers or soon to be drivers to do so in a safe manner. Today, we hope to talk about guidelines around driving with diabetes. Given we know that some guidelines can be very different than practical real life, we will have also Natalie here to share some reflections on her personal experience of driving with type 1 diabetes.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I am 17 years old, and I've been living with type 1 diabetes since I was 9. I have been involved with Breakthrough T1D since my diagnosis, and I've been driving for almost 3 years now.
Thank you, Natalie, for being here. So, before launching into what guidelines are for safe driving practices, we thought it would be helpful to give just some background information as to what these guidelines are based on and why they exist. Most guidelines that impact youth around diabetes and driving are focused on hypoglycemia prevention and treatment. The reason for this is that studies have shown that hypoglycemia impairs driving safety and judgment, impacting cognitive, motor, and perceptual functioning. So, the first recommendation is to monitor blood glucose before getting behind the wheel. This can be done either by looking at your CGM or doing a fingerstick glucose. If your blood glucose is low, below 70, do not drive and instead treat. Recheck your glucose and ensure it is in the normal range before you start to drive. Ideally, you should wait 30 to 60 minutes after normalization of blood glucose, given that there is known delay in recovery of cognitive function following an episode of hypoglycemia. If your blood glucose before driving is in the low normal range, like say 70 to 90, consider ingesting preventative carbohydrates or taking other actions around your insulin delivery system to prevent a fall in glucose. Natalie, what do you tend to do around this for before you get behind the wheel?
Yeah, so my number one rule is I always make sure to check my CGM before I drive. And if for some reason that I think the number isn't accurate, or maybe I just put on a new sensor, I'll make sure to do a finger stick to double check. And if my blood sugar is under 70, then I won't drive. I'll make sure to treat the low first. But if I'm on the lower side, I will just have a snack before driving and keep an eye on it.
Great. Now, the second recommendation is to always keep a source of rapid acting glucose within reach in your vehicle. A lot of people will, stash some glucose tablets in the glove box, things like this. But yeah, Natalie, what do you tend to do in terms of your way of treating hypoglycemia if it happens on the road?
Yeah, I mean, I have glucose all over my car in the center console, side of the door, and juice is my favorite just because I know it brings my blood glucose up pretty quickly. But I also keep Smarties and glucose tabs, especially if you live somewhere where you have cold weather. It's important to have multiple sources of glucose to make sure that nothing freezes.
That's a great tip. And the third recommendation is to continue to monitor your glucose while you're driving. And if you're not on a CGM, check your glucose every hour if you're going for a really long drive. If while you're driving you do receive an alert that your glucose is low, or if you have symptoms of hypoglycemia, the recommendation is to stop the vehicle and pull over as soon as safely possible. Then treat your low blood glucose with a source of rapid acting carbohydrates. And then, as with recommendations around beginning to drive, wait until you have documented a normal glucose value plus cognitive recovery, potentially another 30, 60 minutes before resuming driving. Natalie, I'd love to hear how this has worked for you in real life, as this is another one of those tips that can be easy to say but harder to do in action.
Yeah, of course. In the past, my lows have typically happened in the afternoon, which happens to be when I'm trying to drive home from school. And one instance about a year ago, I got a Dexcom alert that I was 66 with an arrow down. I wasn't close to my house, but I wasn't close to school either, so I made sure to pull over, and it happened to be in my friend's driveway because it was pretty convenient, and I just waited with her for my blood glucose to come up before I started driving again. And, now I just give a little bit of carbs before I drive, that's been really helpful, and just trying to notice those patterns of lows around driving and building a plan to help counteract those situations.
Those are great recommendations. And a final recommendation around driving with diabetes is to make sure you're wearing some form of medical ID or have your diabetes diagnosis listed on your emergency medical information on your smartphone. This is so that in case of a car accident or if you're unconscious, you want EMS or bystanders to be aware of your diabetes diagnosis. Um, how have you handled this, Natalie? Do you have some form of medical ID on you?
Yes, I do. I have my medical info on my phone and also my watch. And an important note that I have on my medical info is what my glucagon looks like and where they can find it on me.
Great, thank you. Another note on safe driving, just in general, is to avoid texting and driving, as well as substance use, such as marijuana or alcohol while driving, as these can greatly increase the risk of motor vehicle accidents. Alcohol, in particular, deserves a special comment in that this can contribute to hypoglycemia risk in someone with diabetes, not just when consuming alcohol, but for several hours later. And thus, even more precautions to prevent hypoglycemia need to be enacted. Um, if you want to learn more about the impact of alcohol on your type 1 diabetes, here's a link for some more information on that topic. Um, but that's really all we have for you today. We really appreciate you tuning into this conversation and be safe out there on the road.